What is up, everyone? Boshi here, and we're not in raid today, but we are checking out the update highlights for 4.7, so let's jump into it. Alright guys, so we're not going to check out every single thing on this page, as it does include the champion rebalance news, which came out a couple of days ago. Now, there are plenty of content creators that did make videos about this. I unfortunately did not, but I do highly recommend you guys checking out those videos. And if you haven't heard about the rebalance, I'll go ahead and leave a link down to this page below so you guys can check it out for yourselves and see if any of your champions from the vault ended up getting a buff. Now, I believe there are about 11 or so champions that got a rebalance, so definitely make sure you check that out. Now, we're going to go through everything else on the page just because the main purpose of this was to go over the epics that are going to be included in the fusion, which starts out on Thursday, but there were a couple of other things that they added onto this page. So the very first thing is going to be boss guides. So first of all, we're introducing a neat little feature that will let you, whether you're a green newbie or a grizzled veteran, learn more about various raid bosses and how to beat them before you get into the fight. So every dungeon, every boss stage in the Doom Tower, faction wars, and even clan boss battles will all feature a special pop-up that contains a full description of the boss's skills and the overall strategy you'll need to deal with them. The pop-up menu will be accessible via a special button on the battle selection screen. So this first part is definitely going to be a nice feature, especially for newer players. As we get added content into the game, it can become very overwhelming and you just don't know where to start. So having a little tiny guide and explanation of each of the bosses and how the fights work is definitely a nice thing. Now, the second part of this is going to be more of a thing for the veteran players. So it says, if that alone isn't enough, the second tab will feature a list of teams of the week that, as the name suggests, were the most successful at dealing with that particular boss. So this is going to be more of I think, a flex feature, I should say. I think it's going to be very similar to something like they have in the Doom Tower, where it shows you the top teams of like how quick they were. So I think that's exactly what this is going to be. I wish they would take more unique teams and have a way of adding those onto this list rather than just showing the fastest teams, because you're going to be seeing very similar things when it comes to a lot of these bosses and stuff like that. So that's the only tweak I would wish they would do, is like have a person reviewing some of the more interesting comps out there and making those teams of the week and kind of showing and showcasing those teams. But that's the only thing I don't like about that. Next, we have the champion rebalance stuff. Like I said, if you haven't heard about it, definitely check out some content creator videos or even just read through it yourselves. There were a decent amount, like I said. Now, we did get news that the artifact and accessory storage will receive an additional 300 slots. This is always a nice thing to see, and I think they almost had to do this as they introduced super raids, so a lot more people were getting a lot of artifacts and accessories a lot quicker. So definitely nice to see. Next, we'll go into, so Sigmund the High Shield. I did make a video review on him. I'll leave a card at the top of the video for you guys if you want to check that out. I would highly appreciate it if you did. But we did not know the booking situation for him, so now we can take a look at it. It does look like he's going to take about 10 or 12 books, I should say. So it looks like the chance to remove a random buff is going to go up to 75% with books, and then the 75% against bosses will go up to 100%. So that's always a nice thing, and I think we did expect that to happen. On the A2, it looks like the chance to provoke is going from 50% up to 75% chance when booked, so nice to see. And the 75% chance to land that decreased attack will be going up to 100% chance with books. And you're going to be able to drop this down to a 3-turn cooldown, so definitely another thing I think we kind of predicted there. And then his A3 will be going down to a 3-turn cooldown, which is very good, as this is, I think, going to be his very not niche, I should say, but his very support type of ability, which needed to be on a lower cooldown for you to benefit a lot from it. So definitely check out that video if you haven't seen it though. Next, let's go into the new epics that are going to be part of this fusion. So the very first one is going to be Duhr the Hungerer. So he's going to be Spirit Affinity, the support type for the faction of Demon Spawn. So on the A1, we have Idiot's Bulk. Attacks one enemy, has a 30 or 40% chance if you book it of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. Very basic A1. It's always nice to have CC on the A1 or some type of effect there. Typically, you would want like a debuff or something like that, but a stun debuff for CC is never a bad thing. Like I said, I wish it did have a higher chance to land, but yeah, not a bad A1. On the A2, we have Cannibal Litany. Places a 30% reflect damage buff on all allies for 2 turns, a 15% continuous heal buff on all allies for 1 turn, then heals all allies by 15% of their max HP, and you can drop this down to a 3-turn cooldown. So right off the bat, it's nice to get that continuous heal and that direct heal. Reflect damage is definitely not a wide used buff. Mainly it was used for Fire Knight to get those shields down, and I definitely could see you using that here. But yeah, I'm not exactly sure how big this ability is going to be. Maybe they're planning on doing something with reflect damage in the future. I don't know, but definitely not a bad ability though. On the A3, we have Hungry for More, revives 2 random allies with 50% HP, then fills their turn meter by 50%, and can go down to a 4-turn cooldown. So right now, right off the bat, whenever you see these types of abilities, or like a revive ability, they're automatically a shoe-in for the faction wars. So definitely it's going to be an accessible epic for I think a lot of people if you're at least participating in the fusion. So this might be a good one to go after if you're having troubles with demon spawn, because obviously in order to get 3 stars for the faction wars you have to have everyone alive, so this will definitely help with that. But yeah, overall not a bad champion. And then we also, we have the aura, increase allied defense and faction crypts by 30%. I'm not a big fan of faction crypt only auras, but that's definitely not a bad one because it adds to survivability. So overall, though, I definitely don't think this is a bad champion. I think this will be a great champion for faction crypts if you're having issues or getting introduced into the demon spawn faction crypt. But yeah, definitely make sure you're checking him out if you're only looking at going for epics during this fusion. The next one is going to be Thylessia. So it's going to be a force type attack based champion for the Night Rev. I wish they would stop adding force champions, and my big thing with that is just because the faction 21 waves have the Valkyrie waves on the second one, and force champions just do such a horrible job in there. But yeah, let's look at the kit. So on the A1, we have Weft of Madness. Attack one enemy, has a 50% or a 70% chance if you book it of applying a debuff spread effect, taking one random debuff from the target and placing it on all enemies under Hex debuff. So we've never seen a debuff spread on an A1. Now this is going to be reliant on Hex debuff, which they are slowly adding into the game. It seems like they're going to do something big with Hex, so might be a good champion to, I guess, what's the word invest in, just because we think that Hex is going to be maybe a major thing in the future. But yeah, so definitely a weird A1, depending on your situation with Hex champions, but yeah, it could be decent in the future. On the A2, we have Shrieking Voice, attack all enemies, increasing the duration of all debuffs on all enemies by 1 turn on a 3-turn cooldown. That's not a bad ability. Now, granted, depending on the situation with your debuffs and stuff like that, but overall, a debuff extender is never a bad thing to have. So, especially when it's all enemies. So, this is going to be really nice for waves when you're going against maybe Doom Tower, even faction crypts. On the A3, we have Melancholia. Attack all enemies, places a big decreased defense debuff for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. So you have 2 AoE abilities, meaning she's maybe likely for a stun set, even if the A1 is only a single target. But bringing a AoE big decreased defense, I don't know if Night Rev actually has this, so this is actually a really good thing to see. But yeah, very basic A3, but very effective A3. And then we have the passive, Feast of Woe. When attacking enemies under decreased defense debuff, has a 50% chance of placing a Hex debuff on them for 2 turns. So right there is going to be where you're going to get your Hex. Now, there aren't a lot of Hex champions out as of yet. There's, I think, Thea, there's Cleo, there's Thylessia, we had Rule the Huntsmaster. So there's only a couple out there. Like I said, it might just be an investment toward the future of the game. But yeah, overall, not a bad champion, but it's going to be it's a weird champion to go right after, but it does have some really cool abilities with the AoE decreased defense, along with the debuff duration addition. So, yeah, overall, I think might actually be worth going for, even if you aren't a big fan of the Hex champions. Next is going to be Scabrius. So a magic attack based champion for the Skinwalkers. So on the A1 we have Gutter Knife. Attack one enemy has a 50 or a 70 or no, just a 70% chance booked of placing a 5% poison debuff for 2 turns. Nice on the A1, honestly. Even if it's a chance to just land one poison, a poison can be major damage on a lot of fights. So overall, not a bad A1 at all. On the A2, we have 9 Horde. Attack all enemies has a 75 or 100% chance if you book it of placing a leech debuff for 2 turns, and you can drop this down to a 3-turn cooldown. Now, depending on his multipliers, as he is an attack-based champion, this could be really good, and having leech isn't always a bad thing to have. I know it's a very underrated debuff, I think, for a lot of people, but it allows for sustain for a lot without the need of lifesteal and shields and all that type of stuff. So overall, I'm a big fan of leech, so I like this ability a lot, and I think his multipliers, it looks like they're going to be decent, just because he's an attack-based champion and there's a lot of decent damage books in there. So yeah. On the A3, we have Vicious Spite. Attack one enemy has a 75 or 100% chance if you book it of placing a big weaken debuff for 2 turns, and then also places a big increase attack buff on this champion for 2 turns if the weaken debuff is placed, and this goes on a 4-turn cooldown. So overall, right here, you're getting a single target big weaken along with increased attack on himself. So unfortunately, I wish he would apply attack or increase attack to everyone there. But like once again, I think if his multipliers are good, he's automatically going to be a decent champion for you. He has a poison, he has the leech for sustain, and then he has a weaken debuff. So always a good thing there. And then you have the passive Verminous. Damage increased by 20% when attacking enemies under poison debuffs. So right off the bat, very good synergy just with his A1 alone, but you also have a lot of poison champions out there. You have Frozen Banshee for a rare. You have stuff like Cavalax or Bad L if you're lucky enough to have them. Just plenty of poison champions. Even Urogrim, even if he is getting nerfed, is still going to be a good champion. So yeah, definitely going to be a nice champion to have here if you're looking for a good damage dealer, possibly for clan boss. And then we have the last one, Demytha, Void Support Dwarf. So right off the bat, might not be one that you can get an extra copy of just because they like to do that with Void champions, but you never know. We'll have to see about the schedule and all that. Definitely looks cool from the picture though, and she is a dwarf, which is my favorite faction, so probably gonna like her. Let's see. So on the A1, we have Fires of Old. Attack one enemy 2 times, places a shield buff for 2 turns equal to 10% of this champion's max HP on the ally with the lowest HP. There is a lot of books on the A1, unfortunately, and they're all just +5 to damage and shield, so I hate when they do that type of thing. But overall, the A1 is definitely not going to be a bad thing. It does provide a little bit of mitigation and survivability to your lowest ally HP. So yeah, overall not a bad A1 there, even though it does require a lot of books. That's the one part I do not like. On the A2, we have Light of the Deep. Increase the duration of all ally buffs by 1 turn, and then decrease the duration of all ally debuffs by 1 turn. That's going to be a fantastic A2, especially for people running the clan boss teams that do the increased duration type stuff. So definitely really good right there. And then also heals all allies by 2.5% of their max HP, heals by a further 2.5% max HP for each turn added to or removed from the duration of buffs and debuffs by the skill, and it goes go down to a 3-turn cooldown. So yeah, definitely going to be a nice thing. A little bit of a heal, increased duration of shields and stuff like that, decrease any debuffs that got placed on you. definitely going to be a nice thing, especially for faction crypts as well. If you combine it, if you did the Underpriest Brogni fusion, this combined with him is going to be amazing. So yeah. Then on the A3, we have the Channel the Bloodline places a block damage buff on all allies for 1 turn and a 15% continuous heal buff on all allies for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. So block damage for everyone and then a continuous heal on everyone. That's going to be a very nice thing to have, especially on a 3-turn cooldown. So very much like that ability. Faction Crypts automatic shoe-in. Gonna be definitely be interesting in Clan Boss. People might be able to come up with a comp that uses this. Maybe some type of unkillable possibly. So yeah, right there is going to be an awesome thing. And then the aura increase allied defense in all battles by 20%. I like all battle auras just because that means that champion can be put in place of everyone or in anything for everyone. But yeah, definitely like this one. If you're not going to be going for the legendary fusion, I definitely think she's going to be worth going for. Actually, I think all the epics are definitely worth going for. Like I said, this is going to be more of a long-term investment. If you get Thylessia, Scabrius, I think is going to be a high damage dealer. She, I think, is going to probably be the more useful one for everyone if you do just go for an epic. Duhr the Hungerer, like I said, definitely going to be useful for faction crypts as he does have a revive. So yeah, overall, all the epics I honestly think are going to be really good investments for everyone if you do not decide to go for Sigmund. But yeah, guys, that is it. So hopefully you guys liked the review. Let me know if you guys are going to go for the epics, if you're going for all the epics, only a specific one. I know it might depend on the schedule and how they do this whole fusion depending on the fragments and all that type of stuff. But yeah, let me know what you guys think, and I will talk to you guys later. See ya.